There are many state and local governments who are just now starting to work towards compliance with the new ADA Title II web rule. As they are finding out, it is very difficult to fit all of the work in what is now just about just over 3 months left right now. So on the screen with me, I have a blog post that I recently published. It is titled 3 Month ADA Web Project Flow: How to Rush Title II Compliance. So this gets at, hey, if we are under these time constraints, what do we need to do from here? What steps do we take? And so let's go ahead and just look at the chart that I have on the screen. We start with requirements, and I know this is fundamental and a lot of people want to push past it, but if you are in this position, it is so important to understand the web rule and what is required and what it is not, is not required, because there are exceptions, and you really just need to focus in on exactly what needs to be done. That's so important so that we're not going off in the wrong direction to start with. And when you're under these type of time constraints, it's very easy to start pushing past the fundamentals. But it's so important that we start our project with a solid foundation, and the only way we're going to do that is to know exactly what we are required to do for compliance. So don't look past step one. It's not going to take you that long. I'll include a link to the description where you can get the quick takeaways for the web rule. All right, number two is inventory and ownership. So here we just need to inventory our different web content, our different digital assets, and then also identify who is in charge of each of those assets, who's responsible for those. And so then we know what the requirements are going to apply to. Next, we need to prioritize. So if you are under this condensed time deadline, right? Like just over 3 months, then we need to prioritize so that we work towards compliance on the most important digital assets. We don't want to be treating everything equally. Instead, we want to look at, the the pages that are going to get the most visibility, the PDFs that are most frequently used, etc. So we're going to prioritize there, and then we're going to continue work after the deadline. So if you're feeling a lot of pressure, I think some of that can be alleviated just by knowing that we are going to prioritize with a start in 2026, because that is the only path forward. Even if you hired us and you said, hey, we need to do everything, we just can't. There's not going to be enough time to work through, let's say, 2,500 PDFs along with 10 websites. It's just not going to be enough time. But you can prioritize, and that way you can really reduce your risk as you are working towards compliance. And then after the deadline, you can just keep going and go ahead and optimize what you have in place. Number four, you will need some accessibility audits. So here I have WCAG audits. Here we're going to look at your web properties. Then we're going to conduct a desktop and mobile audit where desktop and mobile is applicable. Otherwise, it might just be desktop, for example, if this is a web app, but for your web properties. So it could be, let's say you have 12 web properties, then you would want to have an audit conducted on those 12, or at least prioritize within those 12. Next, document remediation. So we're also going to have document remediation going on. We're going to start this immediately. So while the audits are being conducted, we can start on document remediation. With documents, we typically don't audit them unless they're a template. So we're going to go ahead and start remediation. You can do that. It's not just PDFs. Think about Word documents, think about Excel spreadsheets. And so we're going to make sure that our documents are accessible. And then we have remediation. So once the audits are finished, then we can start remediating. And it's so important that either your team is going to be who's going to remediate, or you're sourcing out work for remediation. As you're making fixes, it's okay that there are still issues after you remediate, because that's why we have our next step, which is validation. And the less rounds of the better you remediate to begin with, then the less rounds of validation you will need. But you'll still need validation, because we need to make sure that the web properties are indeed WCAG conformant. And so here I have 2.2. The web rule is for 2.1. 2.2 takes that a little bit further. It just depends. When you work with some state or local governments, they'll be focused in on WCAG 2.2. Others, it's just 2.1. 2.2 is going to take slightly longer. So if you are under this rush, you may want to just opt for 2.1 and then go for 2.2 when you start to optimize. Then next I have archived content handling. So we want to archive content wherever possible. And again, we're going to look to the web rule to decide what content can be archived. But if we archive the content, then we don't have to remediate it. So we're going to go ahead and look and see what the web rule is, and then go ahead and start archiving. And I've received a request for this, but if you're asking me, so I'll just tell you, someone emailed me and they asked me, hey, can we archive our web content? That's not a question I'm going to answer over the email. Even if you say, well, here's the link to our content, that's not something that that is a very, that is a significant ask. That is a question that has, that has consequence tied to it. So it's not something that I'm just going to, hey, here's a mailbag question. Let me go ahead and answer this. I'm not going to do that over email. But you can look at the web rule. There it is, and then we can look and decide, if it's under services, like, hey, here's how I would approach archiving. Here's exactly how I would do this. So that's the next step. Then we have policy development. And so this can be ongoing as well. So when it comes to having an accessibility policy in place, this is not something that we see in the web rule, but it is something that would be a natural consequence of becoming ADA compliant, is that you would have an accessibility policy to help guide you through this entire process to begin with. So that's something that could be ongoing if you're just starting now, is that we're going to develop a digital accessibility policy. And then here you can set out a lot of what I'm talking about in the policy: the roles, the responsibilities, the deadlines. And then again, I mean, especially who's responsible for what are we working on? What are we going to do for next year? What is our overall policy? What is our procurement policy? That's all where we can talk, where we can get into with the digital accessibility policy. And then I have training. So training is very important, because when we just look to social media, for example, we can't have anybody posting social media content that isn't going to be WCAG 2.1 AA conformant. So training is there. Training obviously applies elsewhere. I'm just thinking, once that deadline hits, you need to make sure that all of your social media posts are accessible. And then again, this is where it's so important to know the exceptions and all of the nuances in the ADA Title II web rule. But just looking at social media content, we do need to make sure it's accessible starting on the deadline. Let's see here. Then I have a support documentation. So here, making it so that when you have services and you go through accessible.org, that you don't just get the services, you also get the documentation necessary to go ahead and carry out and maintain what we've already worked on after the project has ended. And so here, there could be support documentation, also user testing. So user testing is extremely valuable. One way it's extremely valuable, it's not just the actual user testing and having someone go through it and relay their practical experience. There is an audit where we're looking for technical accessibility in accordance with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And then there's user testing, which is going to be experiential. But where most clients really like user testing is you have the best kind of evidence of accessibility, that you've actually made your digital asset accessible. So this is going beyond just the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And here we have someone, a professional with a disability, who has gone through, in many cases, your website or whatever your digital asset is. They've gone through that and they've relayed their practical experience. And then if this takes place after we have the audit, after we have remediation, and then after we have validation, then there are going to be less issues, and it's going to be more likely you're going to have a really good user testing session, and then you have evidence of that accessibility. So it's a really good final layer to cap this all off. If they do find any other accessibility issues, then you can go ahead and remediate those. So it's a really good filter. It's a really good, nice secondary layer that you can add to this process. And then so here, it's not really a step 13, but this is just something, there's a lot of things that are ongoing with your project, but then you can have weekly reports and coordination. And this gets into Accessibility Tracker, which is a platform where you can generate progress reports based on your current progress. So you no longer have to have someone spend a few days or a week to write a progress report. Now you can go ahead and use AI to generate a progress report based on your actual progress inside of Accessibility Tracker. Of course, it can do so much more. You can update the status of different issues. You can assign issues to different team members, but there's just so much value in using the Accessibility Tracker platform. And there aren't any other platforms that are going to be able to offer this, because this has been created by us at accessible.org, and it's designed to streamline your project. So this is going to be exactly what you need as you're working through ADA Title II project management. It's going to let you know, hey, how much further, or how much, what pace are we on given our current remediation? And there are actual AI insights. So you can ask AI inside of the Accessibility Tracker dashboard, what do you project our completion date to be based on our current progress? And it can tell you that. There's so many more features, including AI to help your team with fixes. So really, you should be using Accessibility Tracker as your platform for project management, so that you can work towards ADA compliance, know where you stand, get progress reports, keep everyone informed. And it's audit based, it's not scan based. So you wouldn't just use a scan and then know about 25% of the issues that exist on your public facing website. Here, you have the audit for anything. It's not just a public facing website, but it's any digital asset. You have the audit, you'll know exactly where you stand. So you need to use Accessibility Tracker so that you can keep track of your project and know how far away compliance is and whether you need to speed up or whether you're in good shape. So have a project management platform. Go ahead and go with Accessibility Tracker. You can use an audit report, you upload it in Excel spreadsheet, and from there it extracts all of the data. And then there's so many ways that AI can help you speed up your project inside of the dashboard. So this is what I have in this table. I'm going to link to this blog post in the description because we not only have this table. The table is just to start off the blog post. There's a whole write up underneath the table. I'm not going to get into this, but the point is that your project, a lot of people are facing so much pressure right now because they didn't. This was very predictable. I talked about it on the channel when the new web rule came out. I think you were given 2 or 3 years depending on the population of the area you were in. So if you were yeah, just it was population based. So if you had a population of 50,000 or more, you had 2 years, and if it was less than 50,000, then you had 3 years. And of course, many people waited on this, and so now that the for populations 50,000 or more, your deadline is fast approaching in April 24th of 2026. So again, we're just over 3 months away. So if you're in this position, then now you have much better idea of how to proceed forward. If you need help with project management, feel free to reach out to me. In fact, and if you need help with project management too, I have a YouTube series that I will link to in the description. I'll link to that playlist. And then there was one other thing. I'll link to Accessibility Tracker in the description. You really need Accessibility Tracker for your project. It's the only platform that's just streamlined for, it's not just ADA compliance, but like it's exactly what you would need as you're working for compliance with this new web rule. You can keep track of everything and know where you stand with all of your issues. And then so I'll link to that. If you need help, feel free to reach out to me. There was one other thing that I was going to say. All of the resources will be in the description. And yeah, so it's possible, right? With prioritization, that's going to take a lot of the pressure off of you in meeting this deadline. Just prioritize, work on getting the bulk of your web content and your web properties done by the deadline. After the deadline, then you can start to work on the pages, screens, properties that aren't as visible, that aren't as integral to the primary user flows. So I'll include links to all of the resources in the description.